Once again, I welcome you to my YouTube channel. In this video, we're going to learn about the bone, especially the gross anatomy of the bone. That's a big picture of the bone. After which, I will delve into the microscopic structure of the bone. In other words, what you see under the microscope, the minute components or details of the bone. So, join me on this exciting journey as we learn about the bone. Now, the bone is a rigid living organ that is a major component of the vertebrate skeleton. All right. So the key word is a living organ. We want to highlight that. Okay. Now, if you take the adult human skeleton, typically you have about 206 bones. 206 bones. Now, the largest bone in the body is the femur, which is the thigh bone, and the smallest is the stapes in the middle ear. Yeah. Now, what are the functions of the bone? The primary function of the bone includes one, support and structure. It provides support and structure. So the bones from the skeleton, which support the body's shape and framework. All right, so the bones form the skeleton, which supports the body's shape and framework. Okay. And then two, protection. So they enclose and protect delicate internal organs. For example, think about the scalp protecting the brain, or the ribs protecting the heart and lungs. Okay, so protection is another second function. And then the third one is movement. Okay, the bones act as levers that muscles pull against to produce movement. So walking, running, okay, they are all part of functions of the bone. They also store minerals. So you have mineral storage. Bones serve as a reservoir for vital minerals, particularly if you talk about calcium and phosphorus. All right. So they release them into the bloodstream as needed to maintain bodily homeostasis. So if the level of calcium in the blood is low, then the bone will have to release calcium into the blood. Vice versa. If the levels of calcium in the blood is high, calcium will have to mobilize back into the bone for storage. Right? You can think about phosphorus in the same manner. Okay. Then it also plays a role in blood cell production, formation of blood cells. So the red bone marrow produces red and white blood cells and platelets, right? So bone formation occurs within, blood cell formation occurs within the bones. Okay, so if something happens to the bones, it can affect the blood cell production, or it can lead to anemia and other abnormalities. Okay. Then hormonal production of hormones. The bones produce hormones like osteocalcin, which influences glucose metabolism and muscle function, right? So that's something that you have to also think about. Okay, you hardly hear about this when you're doing your endocrine system, but the bone plays a role in producing what we call osteocalcin. Right. So what is the general structure, the gross structure of the bone? Bones are metabolically active tissues that are constantly being remodeled. Okay. So what we're talking about here is that bones are dynamic tissues. They're dynamic. They're constantly turning over. That is, the older bone is reabsorbed and replaced by deposition of new bone. So it's under dynamic formation. They're constantly changing. So let's look at what it's primarily composed of, right? So if you take the bone, you have the bone tissue, also known as the osseous tissue, the osseous tissue. A specialized connective tissue with an organic matrix, mainly of collagen fibers. Okay, the collagen fibers produce the flexibility, and an inorganic component of mineral salt, primarily calcium phosphate, right? The calcium phosphate is known as hydroxyapatite crystals, now which gives the bone the rigidity and strength, right? So it's a specialized connective tissue with an organic matrix, and that organic matrix mainly consists of what? Collagen fibers. The collagen fibers that makes it flexible. It gives it some flexibility. Okay. And then the inorganic component of mineral salt is mainly calcium phosphate, and specifically hydroxyapatite crystals. That's the name of that calcium phosphate. Okay. So the calcium is what gives the rigidity and strength. Okay. All right. So the bone in general has an outer aspect, which is known as a compact bone or the cortical bone. Okay. Now the dense hard outer layer that makes up about 80% of adult bone mass, and it provides the structural support. So if you look at the diagram on the right side, if you take this blue part, the blue colored portion here, that is the cortical bone area. Okay. So that's a cross section through the bone. If you cut across, you have this diagram here. Okay. All right. Then you have the spongy or cancellous bone. Spongy or the cancellous bone. Okay. This is a lighter, less dense mesh-like tissue found inside most bones, especially at the ends of long bones and in the vertebrae. It is highly vascular and contains bone marrow. So we're talking about this portion here that looks like sponge. Okay, it's called the spongy bone. Okay. And then you also have the bone marrow within the spongy bone. Okay, or the bone marrow within the. So there are spaces containing red marrow. Okay. So the bone marrow, let's talk a little bit about that. It's a soft connective tissue found within the cavities of bones. Red marrow produces the blood cells, production of red blood cells, not hematopoiesis. While we have the yellow marrow. The yellow marrow produces, it's mainly for fat storage. So the yellow marrow is for storage of fat, and the red marrow is for production of the red blood cells. Okay, they are all within the bone marrow. So red marrow and yellow marrow. Okay. Then we have the osteum. The osteum. Now the osteum is a tough fibrous membrane covering the outer surface of bones, except at joints. Right, so it's quite tough and fibrous. They cover the outer surface of bones. Okay, and it contains red blood cells, nerves, and osteoprogenitor cells for bone growth and repair. Okay, so we're talking about the periosteum. Okay, peri means like around, right? That's what it means, periosteum. So if you take the outer covering, so it's going to be somewhere on the outside of the cortical bone. It's going to cover the outer portion. Okay. And then have the endosteum. And endosteum. Endosteum is a thin membrane lining the inner surface of the bone and the medullary cavity. Medullary cavity. So it's inside, lines the inside. You go line the inside of the bone itself. Okay. Endosteum. Yeah. So if you look at this diagram, this is a typical example of how a bone looks like. If you take one of the bones of let's say the femur or the humerus, okay, you have a portion known as a diaphysis. That's this long part. It's not a diaphysis. And then at the ends, you have the epiphysis. Epiphysis. The upper part will be known as the proximal epiphysis, and then the lower part is the distal epiphysis. Okay. Okay. So there's a compact bone right here, and then the medullary cavity inside. Okay. Now, when you cut across the bone, you're going to see circular structures. You going to appear like this. Okay. Many circular structures like that. Okay. And that is what you're seeing teased out here. There. Okay. Those are known as the Havesian systems. Okay. It's called the osteon. Okay. So an osteon is a basic functional unit of the compact bone. It's a basic functional unit of the compact bone. Okay. Also known as the Havesian system. So if you put so many osteons together, you have the bone, right? So what does the osteon consist of? Now the osteum, it consists of what we call the lamellae. The lamellae are the concentric rings. Lamellae, okay, that's the lamellae. Okay. And within the lamellae are some spaces known as the canaliculi. The canaliculi. Now, the canaliculi is the space where you find the bone-forming cells, the osteocytes and osteoblasts. They will be found in the canaliculi. Okay. Now I have the lacuna. The lacunae contain the osteocytes, And the osteocytes, they form the bone. There are blood vessels and nerves within the central canal system here. We call known as the Havesian Canal. The Havesian Canal. Okay, and that's what you see over here. The Havesian Canal. That's where you find the blood vessel, the arteries, the veins, and even nerves, okay, that bring blood to the bone. And the Havesian canals are connected by another canal known as the Volkmann's Canal. Volkmann's Canal. Okay. So those are some names that you come across when you are talking about the bone. So what are some types of bones that you know of? Now we can classify bones into 5 main types. We have what we call the long bones, short bones, flat bones, and irregular bones, as well as the sesamoid bone. So the long bones. Now the long bones are longer than they are wide. They act as levers for movements. Example, femur, humerus, and phalanges. All right. So the thigh bones, the bones in the arm, and then the fingers. They are known as long bones because they are several times longer than they are wide. Okay. And they have the short bones. The short bones. They are cube-shaped bones. They're providing stability and some limited motion. Okay. Example, the carpal bones in the wrist, right? And the tarsal bones in the ankle. They are short bones. Okay. They are cube-like in shape. And they have the flat bones. These are thin, flat, and often curved, offering protection and broad surfaces for muscle attachment. Example would be the bones of the skull, the ribs, and then the scapula. They will be flat bones. And they have the irregular bones. The irregular bones, they have complex shapes that don't fit into any of the categories we describe here. Often they protect internal organs. Okay, for example, the vertebrae or the pelvic bones, they'll be referred to as irregular bones. And they have the sesamoid bones. Sesamoid bones. They are small, round bones embedded in tendons to protect them from stress and wear. For example, talk about the patella, the kneecap. Okay, the kneecap is another sesamoid bone because it's embedded within the tendon, right? So those are the types of bones that you come across. Next, we're going to talk about the microscopic aspect of bones in my next video. Hope to see you again. Bye-bye.